Bangladesh, a South Asian nation half the size of the United Kingdom, but with almost 3 times the population. More than 160 million people live here. For years, this was one of the poorest places on earth, with more than 80% of people living below the poverty line. But in recent times, Bangladesh has been booming, and the lives of millions have improved. Women are taking a much more active role. Their contribution to the labour force has jumped from 16% 2 decades ago to more than 40%. They're leading the way in low-skilled work, in industry and in business, transforming their lives and lifting their families out of poverty.
আমার এখন দোতলা বাড়ি আমার বাচ্চাকে মানে দুইটা বাচ্চাই মাস্টার ডিগ্রি করছে সব এই ব্যবসার কারণেই
Over the past decade, Bangladesh's economy has grown by more than 6% every year. It's just one of 30 countries in the world to achieve this. It grew by 7.3% last year, the highest rate in more than 30 years. And this year's growth is expected to be even higher at 7.8%.
45 years back, the size of the economy was only about 10 billion US dollar, and now it is 250 billion US dollars. So 25 times larger economy.
But what's driving this remarkable change? In a country with an abundance of skilled and unskilled workers, progress has often been held back by political instability, natural disasters and weak infrastructure. Despite these problems, many industries are flourishing. Bangladesh is the world's second largest exporter of ready-made garments after China. It sells generic medicines to more than 140 countries. And overseas demand for its traditional goods is growing. A country once dismissed as a basket case, Bangladesh has now become an influential and competitive player on the world stage.
When you start, you always want to be that, hey, I want to take this everywhere, I want to be as big as possible, right? But believing something is one thing and then seeing it is another.
Key to Bangladesh's boom is its garment industry. Last year, it accounted for 82% of the country's exports and nearly 15% of its gross domestic product. It also created jobs for nearly 4.5 million people, more than 60% of them women.
বাচ্চা কাচ্চা লেখাপড়া শেখাতে লাগে টাকা পয়সার দরকার আছে না তা যদি আমরা বাইরে থেকে ইনকাম করতে না পারি তাহলে কিভাবে এদিক দিয়ে খরচ করব
Masulmath Muslima Begum moved from her village to the capital Dhaka 8 years ago. Her basic salary is around $65 a month, but with overtime, when she works up to 12 hours a day, she earns $140. But not so long ago, these factories were among the most dangerous in the world. In 2013, the Rana Plaza complex, housing several factories, collapsed. More than 1,100 workers died. The international outcry was intense, and nearly 800 factories were shut down.
Rana Plaza was a wake-up call for us, and after Rana Plaza, we learned a lot of things.
A wide range of health and safety measures came into effect in thousands of factories supplying Western retailers. One of them is the factory where Masulmath works.
আমাদের ফ্যাক্টরিতে ফায়ারের ব্যাপারে সবকিছুই সরঞ্জাম আছে এখানে ট্রেনিং দেওয়া আছে ট্রেনিং দিয়ে একটা টিম গঠন করা আছে যখন কোনো দুর্ঘটনা ঘটবে তারা কাজ করবে
After the collapse of Rana Plaza, the garments industry, unions and Western buyers signed several safety agreements. But the deals were only for 5 years, and unions are concerned the factories will once again become unsafe.
Total আমরা যদি ইনস্পেকশন বলি এবং তাদের যে ত্রুটিগুলা সেই ত্রুটিগুলা চিহ্নিতকরণ বলি এবং তারপরে সেগুলাকে রিমিডিয়েশন করার কথা বলি তাইলে আমি আইএলও যেটা স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্স দিছে যে 15% 15% হ্যাঁ আমি এই স্ট্যাটিস্টিক্সের সাথে একমত।
Many smaller factories on the outskirts of Dhaka are still believed to be dangerous. TRT World obtained footage from several factories that appear to confirm this.
আগুন লাগলে নিবানোর কোনো ফ্যাসিলিটি নাই, যদি কারেন্টে কোনো সমস্যা হয় সেটার কোনো ব্যবস্থা নাই, এ নিয়েই আমরা কাজ করতেছি।
It's not known how many people work at places like this, but the manager here admitted his goods are sold to European countries.
আমরা স্পেন, লন্ডন, আপনার লেবানন, বিশ্বের বিভিন্ন দেশে আমরা প্রোডাক্ট করে থাকি।
Industry leaders deny the dangers.
If you want to do any subcontract to any other factories, that factory has to be compliant. And if you do unauthorized subcontract, then that brand will discard the business for lifetime.
Despite the controversies, garment production remains Bangladesh's biggest earner. It brought in more than $28 billion in revenues last year. But for many people, factory work is not an option. 62% of Bangladeshis live in rural areas and often have to find other ways to earn a living. Shamima Sultana is one of millions of Bangladeshi women born without assets who do not qualify for a bank loan. She'd always dreamed of starting her own poultry business, but 23 years ago all she had in savings was $60.
অনেক ব্যাংকে আমি মানে ঋণের জন্য অনেকবার ধর্ণা দিচ্ছি, কিন্তু ঋণ পাই নাই। তো বুড়ো বাংলাদেশ তো খুব সহজে এবং একদম বাড়িতে ধরতে গেলে পৌঁছায় দেয় আমাদের।
She borrowed another 60 from a microfinancing company and bought 300 chickens. Now she earns several thousand chickens as well as cattle and has recently taken out a new loan of $24,000. Bangladesh is a cash-based economy. Half the population doesn't have bank accounts. Microfinancing schemes are trying to fill that gap. They're aimed mainly at women and charge 19 to 27% interest, compared with 12 to 16% charged by most commercial banks. The rates are capped by the government and lenders have been tightly regulated since 2011.
The entire spreadsheets, everything is monitored very strictly by our internal audit department, by MRA audits, by Bangladesh Bank audits.
Microfinance was pioneered in Bangladesh 40 years ago by the economist Muhammad Yunus. For his efforts, he was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, and the concept has since been adopted all over the world. But it's also been heavily criticised. The Bangladesh-based non-governmental organisation BRAC has been lending collateral-free loans to poor landless people across the country for 3 decades. Its executives deny accusations that this is just a socially acceptable scheme to take money from the poor.
If you look at the Bangladesh microfinance industry, even today, 40 years on, the microfinance sector as a whole is growing at roughly 20% annually on a very large base. The portfolio at risks are still very low and manageable.
But the borrowers have at times felt under pressure.
মাঝে মাঝে মনে হয় যে ইন্টারেস্ট যদি আর একটু কম হতো আমাদের জন্য ভালো হতো। ঋণ দিতে না পারলে পরে ঋণ পাবো না, সামাজিকভাবে আমি সবার কাছে ছোট হব, সবাই জানবে, এটাই আমার ভয় ছিল।
For others, there are alternatives. Anisa Akhtar is an info lady. She provides services, goods and advice to local women. She invested $65 in a social enterprise called iSocial and put down a deposit for a tablet and smartphone, which she uses to order products and carry out her research.
গ্রামের মহিলাদের যে কিছু গোপনীয় কিছু রোগ বা তাদের কিছু যা ডাক্তারের কাছে বলতে চায় না বা বলতে পারছে না বা ফ্যামিলির কাছে শেয়ার করতে পারতেছে না, সেটা আমার কাছে অনায়াসে তারা শেয়ার করতেছে।
Anisa is one of more than 400 info ladies working across Bangladesh, and iSocial wants to increase that number to 10,000 within the next few years. The enterprise has attracted attention outside Bangladesh. Haiti has adopted the model and Nepal is planning to do the same. For some women, the job isn't always easy.
One of the biggest challenges that we face is different social barriers, things like when parents or guardians wouldn't allow the info ladies to join us because they would think what other people will think, or they think going door to door is not respectful and things like that.
It's not a problem Anisa has had to face.
গ্রামে আমি রেসপেক্টটা খুব পাচ্ছি, এর জন্য আমার ফ্যামিলি আমাকে খুব সাপোর্ট করে, বিশেষ করে আমার শাশুড়ি আমার সাথে রোদ্রের বেলায় গ্রামে অনেক সময় ঘুরছেন, আমাকে কাজে সাহায্য করছেন। আমার হাজবেন্ড কখনো উনি পিস টান দেন নাই, উনি সবসময় বলছেন যাও তোমার কাজটা ভালো, তুমি যে করতে পারো।
But these opportunities have been a long time coming. Bangladesh gained independence in 1971 following a brutal 9-month war with Pakistan.
This army, this Bangladesh army, fought for liberation of this country.
The following 2 decades of military rule did little to end poverty or bring about political stability. It left Bangladesh with no industry, foreign reserves, or modern infrastructure. To make matters worse, repeated floods and cyclones often left large parts of the low-lying country devastated. The adoption of a democratic system in 1991 paved the way for domestic and foreign investment. But successive governments have been accused of mismanagement and neglect.
The governance problem is in terms of regulatory barriers, in terms of corruption, which raises transaction costs.
But Bangladesh now has grand ambitions. The World Bank has raised its status from a least developed country to a middle-income one. The government plans to increase exports from $34 billion a year to $40 billion within the next 15 years, and it's offering incentives to lure in investors, including setting up 100 special economic zones where businesses can operate under favourable terms.
First 10 years, the industrial units don't need to pay any taxes to the government. They can import all that machineries and constructional equipments in the economic zones without paying any duty.
One industry the government has actively been involved in is the IT sector. It wants to create 2 million IT jobs within the next 3 years. It's set up 33 technology parks across the country, where e-commerce and software companies pay low rent and are given tax breaks. The sector itself is taking the lead, with many companies writing their own software instead of buying it from overseas. One such company is Patao, a motorcycle ride-sharing app with more than 100,000 users every day. Most of them are young urban professionals or students. In a country where heavy traffic often brings cities to a standstill, it's transformed their daily routine.
Often I take bus for coming to the campus. It normally take 50 minutes to get there. Sometimes it more than that, like 1 hour and 20 minutes. It took me 15 minutes to get here.
Now, some customers are buying smartphones just to use the service.
We went down on the streets. We got people to learn about it. Right? We taught people by hand that, hey, this is how you request a ride, this is how you go from point A to point B.
Patao is one of 2,500 e-commerce businesses in Bangladesh. Another 15,000 small companies are thriving on social media. And once again, Bangladeshi women are making their mark.
We have lots of entrepreneurs in this sector. Like in Facebook, there are 8,000 women are working on e-commerce sector. So this sector really going fast for women also and for everyone.
IT is also playing a vital role in education. A local charity, Jago, uses video conferencing to hold classes with disadvantaged children living in rural areas. Teachers here give 2 hours of English lessons every day.
We have a board. We can write whatever we want. We can share some videos if we want. We can show them some pictures if we want. We can show them some documentaries. We can show PowerPoint slides.
Broadband connections are over an optical fibre, but it often cuts out. It's a common problem across Bangladesh. Only half the country has internet access and millions of people have no IT knowledge, something Jago is trying to address. These children have been learning about information technology since around the age of 7 or 8. They've been taught everything from how to identify computer parts to using search engines and writing simple programs. Some of them will go on to higher education, where they'll obtain diplomas in information technology or computer science. Like all the children in this classroom, Sonali Hussain doesn't have a computer at home, but now she feels confident using one.
The world is now based on communication and technology, so it is important. Everyone should have the basic knowledge about IT because it plays a great role in our life, everyday life.
The IT sector is one of several thriving high-tech industries. Over the past 20 years, generic drug production here has grown 30-fold. More than 500 kinds of medicines are now made in Bangladesh, including cancer drugs and insulin. It's enough to meet 97% of domestic demand. The government has capped the prices on all medicines so ordinary people can afford them. Like Sonia Mahmood, who suffers from stomach pains. One packet of tablets costs just 83 cents and lasts 2 weeks.
বাসা ভাড়া গ্যাস বিল পানি বিল দেওয়ার পরেও আমার ওষুধ কিনতে কোনো সমস্যা হয় না বাজেটের মধ্যেই আমি কিনতে পারি ওষুধ
Bangladesh sells generic drugs to more than 140 countries, including the UK, US, Turkey and Germany. It's achieved this by copying drugs already on the market without paying costly fees to the patent holders. A concession given to it by the World Trade Organization. Prices are much lower than the originals, even though they contain the same active ingredients. For example, sofosbuvir, originally made by Gilead Sciences, is a drug used to treat hepatitis C. Each tablet costs $1,000, but the Bangladeshi version, Herpetovir, costs just $5. And a single anti-cancer tablet, Alotinib, originally manufactured by Roche, costs $60. The Bangladeshi version, Erlokent, is $3.50. As many as 600,000 tablets are produced at this factory every hour, using state-of-the-art equipment and highly trained staff.
We have almost 70% working in the research and development group. One for formulation and the analytical. So every year we have, from Incepta, I would say more than 50 to 60 new product launching in a local market.
Bangladesh now imports just 3% of the drugs it needs, far less than many other countries. For example, Pakistan imports 30% of its medicines, Vietnam 60% and Singapore 80%. And in a country where it's believed 1 in 5 people are unemployed, it's created thousands of jobs.
After finishing our graduation, I get a job in 1 month. In other sectors, it's not so easy. And the salary structure and incentives are so very nice.
E-commerce and pharmaceuticals may be Bangladesh's future, but for now the country relies on another industry for much of its income. The export of manpower. Money sent home by more than 10 million migrant workers in the Gulf states, Singapore, the US and the UK has earned Bangladesh billions of dollars.
It was only 49 million initially in the first decade. Now it is almost 15 billion. So that augmented domestic demand and made the wheel of the economy move faster.
Another major contribution to the country's prosperity is increased rice production. Thanks to the introduction of seed fertilizer technology, Bangladesh has gone from importing this staple to exporting it. Output has risen from just 13 million metric tons 40 years ago to 40 million.
That makes the economy stable, because if you have to be dependent on imports for food, that creates a lot of pressure on your balance of payments, on your macroeconomic situation.
Bangladesh's economic focus isn't just on the big earners. There's also a growing demand for traditional goods that reflect the country's cultural heritage. But exports have been slowed down by a shortage of artisans. Many weavers like Al-Islam have been making traditional saris since childhood. It's a skill that's been handed down for generations.
আগে যেমন আমরা শিখাইতাম অনেক মানুষ শিখতে চায় না আর এই কাজেতে অন্য কাজে পয়সা বেশি পায়
It's another area where the government has stepped in. Initiatives include training centres like this one, which teach low-earning artisans new skills.
I would like to add something new in my business. That's why I have come here to learn some designing. They have taught me about color, about chemicals, about design.
Despite its successes, Bangladesh still faces many challenges. Wages remain among the lowest in the world. Al-Islam receives just 12 to 15% of the sale price of his goods. So for a sari that costs $700, he will receive just $100, even though it can take him up to 6 months to make something like this. And many garment workers can barely survive.
এই ৫,৩০০ টাকায় একজন গার্মেন্টস শ্রমিকের পক্ষে তার পরিবার সহ তো দূরের কথা তার নিজের পক্ষেও জীবনযাপন করা সম্ভব না
Safety concerns inside the factories also remain.
You cannot monitor every day every factory, right? So the owner, the mid-level management and the factories people, they have to understand what they have to do.
For foreign investors, there are many drawbacks. Bangladesh has suffered from political instability for decades. More recently, a severely underfunded transport and road system has led to mass student protests, and leading activists and journalists have been detained. Added to this, the recent arrival of more than 700,000 Rohingya refugees from Myanmar has put further strains on the country's resources. With elections looming, the government has pledged to address all these issues. But Bangladesh is politically divided, and many believe it won't deliver on its promises. Through all of this, the Bangladeshi people have displayed a resilience and resourcefulness that's transformed their country. The garments industry is projected to bring in more than $30 billion this year. Generic drug exports are growing at a rate of 24% per year, despite competition from India and China. The plan now is to capture 10% of the global market within the next 7 years.
We want to be a global player. We could do it. And we have the technology, world standard technology and world standard equipments.
Bangladesh's IT industry is already worth $250 million and is expected to reach $5 billion by 2021.
The goalpost keeps moving up, right? And I think it will continue to always move up.
Coupled with this, Bangladesh's foreign exchange reserves, which were $200 million in 1976, now stand at $33 billion. And ordinary people are reaping the rewards.
মনে করেন আমাদের এলাকাবাসীতে অনেক গরিব লোক ছিল এবং আমরাও গরিব মানে এই জায়গায় কর্মকাজ করার পর বাড়িতে বাড়িঘর করার মতো নিয়মকানুন করেছি এবং জমি জায়গা রাখছি গরু ছাগল কিনছি এবং বাচ্চাদেরকে লেখাপড়া শিখাইতেছি
Only 23% of Bangladeshis now live below the poverty line, compared with 80% 2 decades ago. In the mid-70s, the average income was $130 a year. Now it's $1,600, while Pakistan's remains just below $1,500. And life expectancy has risen from 50 to 72 years, higher than India's 68 years and Pakistan's 66 years.
10 years back, it was unthinkable that during the time of Holy Eid, people will go out to have vacation. Now everybody tries to go out. If they can afford, they will go abroad. Within the country, there are many resorts that are coming up. They can afford that.
For women, financial freedom has given them confidence and self-esteem.
আমি চাচ্ছি আরো ভবিষ্যতে আরো সামনে যাতে যেতে পারি পুরোর কাছ থেকে আমি আরো পরবর্তীতে আরো বেশি ঋণ নিতে ইচ্ছুক
It's about empowering women, it's about entrepreneurship, and it's about how they can change their lives.
There's even a growing belief that Bangladesh could become the world's 23rd largest economy by 2050.
It's a test case of development, meaning that if Bangladesh succeeds, then any country can succeed.
It's a welcome endorsement for a country that lost everything in a devastating war less than 50 years ago. And for the people of Bangladesh who'd known nothing but hardship and struggle for decades.